Hi, I'm Stacy. Welcome to the kitchen of my old Kentucky home. Today on Bourbon and Biscuits, we're going to be whipping up 2 items that we would serve in the summer if Jessica and I had a southern diner. Let's get started. We're going to be making a green tomato chow chow, which is a perfect topping for a burger, a hot dog, or really any meat. Here's what we'll need. 2 green tomatoes, a half a red onion, a tablespoon each of olive oil, vinegar, and brown sugar, a teaspoon of mustard seed, a half teaspoon each of turmeric and celery seed, a 1/4 cup of water, and a pinch of cinnamon and cayenne. So towards the end of the summer, you have all these great tomatoes still on the vine, and if they don't ripen right before the first cold snap, you want to grab them. And a lot of people like to make fried green tomatoes. A lot of people like to can them, and some people make chow chow. So the first thing we need to do is just slice these up, and then we're going to dice our onion. Excuse me, I meant dice the tomato, not slice the tomato. Then we're just going to go to the stove. We're going to add a tablespoon of olive oil to a hot pan. We're going to put in our onion and all of our spices and cook that for about 4 to 5 minutes. After the onions have cooked down for about 5 minutes, we're going to add the rest of our ingredients, all of our green tomatoes, beautiful color on those, and then about a 1/4 cup of water, our vinegar, and brown sugar. And we are going to let this cook up about 10 to 15 minutes, just till kind of thick and saucy. And that's it. That'll be our green tomato chow chow. So in our fictional Bourbon and Biscuits Southern Diner, this is definitely a menu item that Jessica and I would feature. We'd have a pretzel bun with a burger, some collard greens, a smear of homemade pimento cheese, and this green tomato chow chow. So while this cools enough for me to plate it, let's show you what Jessica would pair with it.
All right, you all, obviously the fictional Bourbon and Biscuits Southern Diner doesn't exactly have a traditional soda fountain because ours has a well-stocked bourbon bar. And today we are going to make bourbon caramel milkshakes. We're gonna be using vanilla ice cream. I've got a caramel cream liqueur here, some caramel sauce for topping, whipped cream for topping, and of course, bourbon. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use 1 ounce of bourbon, and we're gonna use 1 ounce of the salted caramel liqueur. And then I'm going to top this off with vanilla ice cream. So I'm going to use a immersion blender here since I'm just making 1 at a time, but you could obviously double this recipe or more if you want to make it for a group and do it in a blender, a standing blender. All right, that looks good to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix this all up. All right, so now I'm just going to pour this into our glass here. Give it a little bit of a stir just to make sure we got all that nice and combined. Looks like a great texture. All right, and we are going to top this with whipped cream. And then I'm just gonna drizzle some caramel sauce on top for a little extra garnish. All right, there you have it. It is our bourbon caramel milkshake.
It's just, you know, one of the reasons that I love doing this series with you, we've talked about, is sharing the recipes that you and I grew up with and we like to make, right? But more importantly for me, it's doing some recipes that I maybe had seen my grandparents do a long time ago, kind of forgotten, and then tried or handed them for this show to show Kentucky's foodways.
Yeah, and
then,
bring back kind of old traditions for ourselves too.
Yeah, and Chow Chow is one of those. In fact, I didn't even know that's what it was called when my parents were putting up what I think were not just this green tomato relish that we did, but they canned, put up, and I know it had cabbage. I know they made sauerkraut too, but I feel like it had cauliflower and peppers and it was vinegary, and then they would eat it in the winter on things.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you say cabbage because I think where the term chow chow came from is from the French Acadian settlers that were in Nova Scotia that got kind of banished to Louisiana. They started pickling or putting up cabbage, and the French word for cabbage is chou, which is chou. So I think that probably kind of took off as a Southern tradition and then evolved into chow chow.
That probably is right. You know, I found I didn't find the backstory like you did, but in all these cookbooks that I have, the one that's the oldest from like 1906 did have a chow chow recipe in it.
Really?
And it was spelled CHOW twice. And then Darlene that we work with, I can't wait to do this. She said her mother used to make it. Her mother's been deceased. She found one of her old cookbooks and sent it to me. And I'm going to try my hand at that over the weekend because it is a little more elaborate process to can and all that. And that's going to be a bonus recipe for this episode.
Oh, sounds great. Yeah.
So speaking of bonuses, bourbon with a bonus is ice cream.
Yes.
And this is mind-blowing.
It's definitely making the menu, right?
It's definitely. When are we opening Bourbon and Biscuits?
Right. We're closer and closer.
Right. A Southern Kitchen coming to you.
Well, while we might not see you at Bourbon and Biscuits very soon, we will see you on Bourbon and Biscuits next time with more culinary treats and cocktails.
Cheers.
Cheers!